I want to thank Bloomsbury Books for hosting this event and for all of you for coming. And this is a book called The Luxuries of an Unharried Time, subtitled A Career in Classical Music, from New York to Paris, Aspen, Oregon, and Nice, and from computers to the Great Recession. And this is a sequel to my first memoir, which was really about education in music and ideas of art, more than a memoir, even though it was a memoir. That's this right here. This is the first one. Half of the book is really about how I came to write operas. I took over an opera company in New York, and there are some fascinating stories involved with that, because this company was a small company in Long Island, but I discovered when I took over the company that we owned scenery and costumes from the Metropolitan Opera, including some that had been worn by Robert Merrill and some big stars. And the more I dug into this whole scenario, why did we own this stuff and what was it? It got more like a mystery story. And it turns out that behind it all was actually a famous incident in the history of television, where it's referred to in the movie called Game Show, where some of the characters are talking and they say, even a shoemaker from Long Island won the $60,000 question. Well, that's a reference to what happened. There was a shoemaker in Long Island who was an opera buff, and he went on to the $60,000 question. He won the $60,000 by answering Robert Merrill's question to him, and then he won the $60,000 challenge by asking Merrill a question he couldn't answer. So he walked away with $120,000 in 1950s dollars. It's a fair amount of money. And the Metropolitan Opera was just that year moving uptown to Lincoln Center, and they were selling off all these things they had downtown at the old Opera House. And he must have just gone down there and bought all kinds of stuff from them. But I still didn't know the extent until later, when we had some scenic backdrops that are used behind the stage, and we had a couple that were of Paris, and so we set out to restore them. But as soon as I realized I had to measure them and see what was on them and how big they were, we took them to a theater and we hung them up in the theater. And that was the first time anyone suggested to me, when they saw the size, they said, you know, I think these are from the old Metropolitan Opera House. And they were 50 feet wide and 22 feet tall, which is huge, really. And they were on linen. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to research this, and if I find out what production these are from and who might have sung in front of them, I'll use it in the publicity for the company. And I did go to the Met Archives. We verified 3 of the drops were from the 1928 production of Manon, and the first person to sing in front of those was Benjamino Gigli. So that's like having some scenery that Caruso sang in front of. And so we started to restore them, and this actually was so interesting, the New York Times covered the restoration. And the Met found me an expert in restoration of this kind of scenery, which is rather delicate. It's like painted on linen with a certain kind of paint. And so I was there to make sure he didn't do anything radical to the scenery. And he would just talk away, and I got an entire course on scenery from him. And one day he just happened to mention, he said, the Met was the only opera company in the world that used linen for its backdrops. And I went home and I thought, wait a minute, do we have more linen drops? So I went back to our storage, and yes, we had 3 more linen pieces with no paint, and where you could just barely see what was on them. They were giant teasers that were supposed to show like trees reaching down, you know, the branches of trees, and they were on linen. So I realized, okay, we have 6 pieces of scenery from the old Met. Then I found out from him that the Met was probably the only American company that used leg irons to stand up scenery, which means you have these cast iron hinges that come down and bolt into the floor. And we had some fake stone balustrades that if you put them side by side, they'd be longer than this room, and they had leg irons. And so we knew that these were also used in Metropolitan Opera productions. And so that helped me raise money for the company and get it going. And